the Evolution Security Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. This is Aaron Davis and Eric Davis. We have the entire Tactical Twins band back together. I've been on hiatus for a few weeks here. I'm glad to be back. Eric, it's good to get on here with you, bro.
Man, it's great to have you back, man. I've been missing you, man. What's it been, 2 or 3 shows without you?
I think let's see. So
it may have only been 2 shows.
I think it was John Valentine and then the Chess Club Conclave. Was there another one?
Yeah, I think that's it, Aaron. To be honest, I think it was only 2 shows, but it certainly seemed like it was more. But yeah, man, it's great to have you back. How's your neck doing, man?
Man, it's gonna be kind of fun to talk about this because, you know, before going in, long story short, man, it's going great. I don't know if you can see my scar there.
Chicks dig scars. Does Becky dig it?
She hasn't said much about it, but I made a social post. I was trying to think up a cool story for it, you know, like something like the guy brought a knife to a gunfight. You know, something stupid like that. But, you know, it's going great. It's very surprising. And I keep telling people like this, the worst pain I've been in was when the nurse was putting in my IV and she poked it through my vein. Somehow, I mean, dude, that hurt bad. But that's literally the worst pain I've been in. It's really not like I had, you know, hammers and, you know, drills and metal banged into my spine, but I did just a little bit of tenderness here at the incision site. But, and that even being that when I came out of surgery and our surgeon, I say our because Becky was there and he was her surgeon too a year and a half ago. He came out to see her and he didn't even sit down. He goes, "Wow, that was a lot of work." So the deal is that my bone is really strong and it likes to grow. So I was having, you know, I had lots of bone spurs because I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that when you start having disc issues, that your bones will actually start kind of growing and trying to protect themselves and sometimes even fuse naturally. But I had really bad bone spurs. So basically I had 3 levels, the C5, 6, and 7. I'm just labeling them that. So the middle one, I had to have fused because it was so bad. He said that with all the bone that he was going to have to take out of there, it would basically cause so much trauma that the bones would fuse anyway over a synthetic disc. And then on the outside, I've got synthetic discs. So he said every level he had to work much harder than he did.
Well, Aaron, I gotta ask you. I'm gonna put you on the spot, Scott Jedlinski style. The question is, have you been back to jiu-jitsu? And if not, why?
Because I don't want to bust one of these metal things out of my neck. No, I have not been back to jiu-jitsu. Bro, it's gonna be it'll be about 3 months in total that I'll have to be off the mats and do anything, pretty intense like that. Tell you what, that's the worst part of this surgery is having to take it easy.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, I'm
Oh
messing
yeah,
with
I
you
know,
totally.
I know, but
Yeah,
it. I know that some of it, I'm sure, was that I had some opioids going and muscle relaxers, but I'm not joking when I say I've been in hardly any pain.
that's great to hear, man. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of those things where, excuse me, when you go through something like that. I mean, I've been through, procedures and whatnot, and man, I'm a little baby about stuff like that, man.
Hmm.
I hate being, I guess for admittance that I hate being in pain, and of course, I've spoke about this, and the audience has heard me talk about when I blew my L5S1 disc. Man, it was the most excruciating pain ever that I could even imagine. Not going down that road again. Get back to your discussion, but yeah, man, it's great to hear that you didn't go through a lot of pain afterwards.
Well, and the amazing thing is that I've never been in much pain from it. The only symptoms that I've really had have been, depending on how I had my neck positioned, my hands would start burning and go numb.
Hmm.
And dude, I could live with that for the rest of my life if I had to. It's not a big deal. It's annoying. It was annoying, but the thing was, right, that it was last summer when I started realizing I was losing strength, and that's when it's like, okay, got to take care of this. But yeah, I'm glad I did. Now, one great update is, of course, the issue with the strength. So I think I might have talked about this rehab, flex bar, I think is what it's called.
Hmm.
I got this actually to increase my grip strength for pistol. Well, I've been doing several exercises with this, basically just as rehab, or I guess, yeah, rehabbing my muscles. Do my right bicep. Remember, it felt like I lost about 75% of the strength in my arm, dude. I could not curl a 25-pound dumbbell. I
Hmm.
mean, literally stop almost straight up and down. Now I still can't lift a 25-pound dumbbell because actually I'm not supposed to lift that much weight anyway, but I did kind of try it and it's still not there. But the bulk of my muscle is essentially almost completely back. So
Awesome.
so I don't know what that is. If it's just, you know the nerves sending blood flow better. I really don't know. But doing these exercises has already brought back a lot of strength,
That's great to hear.
and I can feel it when I grip my pistol. I'm gripping it harder. So I
And
mean,
that's great.
it's definitely I can definitely tell it.
Once you're
But
back to the range, you'll probably have an immediate progression. Come right
yeah,
back.
I think I will. I'm just going to keep doing these exercises, and because of course, grip strength is a major part of performing well with a pistol. So, and my pistol shooting had suffered a little bit. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much I can step that back up a notch. And you know, there's a little bit that I was going to talk about my pistol shooting, but maybe we can talk about that here in a little bit. But what you got going on?
Well, all I was going to say is that I didn't, I thought you've been shooting awesome. But I'm sure that you yourself, you know where you were at prior to it progressing to the point that it did before surgery. So,
So
um,
here's where my shooting suffered. I was still, shooting at a decently high level, but it was when I went out to distance that I really suffered. And speaking of, I mean, we can just talk about this real quick, kind of segue into this. So at TACCon, I took a 25-yard diagnostics class with Jeff Gonzalez, and I will flat admit I was one of the lower performing shooters in that class. And bro, I can, a year ago, or maybe even a little longer ago, I can't remember, but bro, I could shoot a 95 at 25 yards on a B8 bull
Mhm.
without much
I,
trouble.
I'd certainly witnessed it multiple times.
But bro, I was all over the place in this class, and I know for a fact it was due to my grip strength. So, but another thing though, and one of the things that Jeff came up to me and he told me to, hey, stop, Aaron, hold on a second. And he said, see you. So let's just clear this puppy before I put my finger on the trigger, right? But I was touching the side of the frame, right? Now that's a technique issue, but I have pretty dang long
Yeah,
fingers, and
I do too. I deal with that absolutely.
so it creates a situation where you're trying to angle down onto the trigger, right? And that was one of my issues too, boy. When you get out to distance, you're anything you do on a pistol, especially when you've got a 4.5 pound trigger pull, it's gonna exacerbate if you're touching the frame. But what I was gonna show you, so now, one of the coolest things with my bore sight solutions, I don't know if you've ever seen those, how they create a really cool, they call it a glove bevel,
Mhm.
and several companies do that. But I think Ben's group does it the coolest job, and I'm real glad to have that on my Jesus's gun. But so I decided yesterday. I don't know if you can see this. I went ahead and did my own glove bevel
Yep.
on this.
I
Can you
can
see that, bro?
I can kind of see it. Yeah, where you took out some of the polymer, creating a space for
Yeah.
wherever
So
that. Yeah, go ahead.
so this spot doesn't make much difference to me, but where it really helps is you can see that I brought this up right below that pin,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah,
I took quite a bit of area off of there, and that does make it a lot easier to keep my finger off the frame.
Aaron. Now,
And
was that was influenced by your bore sight
oh yeah,
pistol?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I would have. I'll tell you what, I would have sent this in to Ben, but he doesn't. But I had already done my own grip job, and so he doesn't work on pistols, or they don't work on pistols unless it's unmolested. Probably because I bet you, because hey, Eric, we've talked about this before. Our art background, when we were younger, helps us to do some decent DIY jobs. I put my DIY grip job against a lot of people, um, but I think it's probably because people butcher their guns and send it in to him to try and fix it, and it's just a
Yeah.
no go.
Well, and quite frankly, I never thought about it that way. But, well, excuse me, I agree with you that our artistic background certainly aids in us being able to do decent home grip jobs. But I've certainly had multiple people, when they've handled my Glocks that I've done my own grip jobs, they're like, "Man, who did this for you?" Assuming that it was done professionally. And I said, "No, it was me." They're like, "You're kidding." And I told them, and I've actually done a couple of grip jobs
Yeah,
for some buddies, and I've elected, if they wanted it and they're excited about it, I haven't charged anybody for it, you know.
nope,
And so yeah, and I'm willing to do that for any of my other close
dude.
friends.
One of the keys to pro it up a little bit is if you can get a decent border.
Yeah,
And
and I that's the one thing I have not done. I've just simply made my own borders, um, just with very, very meticulous, smaller stippling than I would inside the grip, but like real smaller
Yeah,
stippling to make my
this is
border.
a I think, some of the other companies do it a little bit different, but I'm using a very sharp, small wood carving tool on this. You can see that. But okay,
Kind of, sort of.
so long story short, though, it literally took me only about an hour and a half to do this whole thing. So I used a sand grind tool and reshaped everything, and then I progressively got finer and finer on sandpaper, and then I used some micro mesh to kind of buff it up. I'll tell you, it's about as fine buffed as what Ben's group did. I just didn't take it as far because I didn't need to. All I really wanted was this space for my trigger finger up against the top of the frame. And for the fun of it, I kind of took some off of the edge of the trigger guard and gives it a little bit more space if you've got your finger angled down.
You got
But
me thinking I might try that on at least one of my pistols
yeah, man,
as well.
I'll show you how I did it. I'll help you get through it.
Cool.
But so yeah, I'm glad to be back, bro. Glad to be back.
Excellent to have you back. Well, Aaron, I think maybe move on to a little bit of the bad news. As of today, what are we at? We're recording
Day
on
3.
June the 3rd, right?
Yep.
As you know, I was sitting there thinking about our audience. I think it's a very, very low probability that there's a lot of folks in our audience that do not know about the pistol brace rule, but it's well worth discussing. And, I'm going to do my best not to devolve into hyperbole. But, for audience members that may not know, of course, the ATF at the behest of the president, Joe Biden, made a rule to where essentially if you go by their definition, almost anything with a pistol brace ends up being now designated as a short barrel rifle, which we know that short barrel rifles, rightly so or not, are governed by the National Firearms Act, or the NFA. And so essentially, with the stroke of a pen, executive fiat, we now have a rule that has the force of law, which in and of itself should be the only defining factor that states that this, or makes it unconstitutional.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's referred to as Chevron deference.
I believe so, Aaron.
That's what Congress gives agencies the ability to regulate through Chevron deference, but I'm pretty sure about that.
Well, and but I think the problem is that agencies are only supposed to be able to make regulations that are authorized specifically by the text of the law.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
remaking a definition, which is what they did in this case, is not authorized. And I'll also like to say, and again, our audience is astute, so a majority of our audience knows this, but I'm grabbing one of my pocket constitutions is a little bit beat up because it rides around in my backpack that I carry daily. And I'd just like to read Article 1, Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. And I'll just repeat that. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress. It doesn't say it doesn't speak anything about, in Article 2, the executive branch being able to write law from the executive branch or from the president, which the executive branch is the president. It's unfortunate we also have, all the massive agencies that have been built under the presidency or the executive branch. But anyway, that is what authorize the Constitution authorizes the creation of law in Article 1, Section 1. And I also believe, Aaron, because this also, it not only has the force of law, which could potentially put people in jail for 10 years and I think a $250,000 fine, when just 12 years ago, the ATF said that this configuration of a sporter rifle was completely legal. They said it didn't. They said expressly that it wasn't. It didn't make it a short barrel rifle. Your thoughts on some of it?
Basically misusing the apparatus, a pistol brace, by shouldering it did not reclassify it as a short barrel rifle.
Yep. They basically said, hey, we can't regulate people using something incorrectly, but that was before Joe Biden took office. And
well, and to be frank, that was one of at least, I think, 3 or 4 times that they made pronouncements on this. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too far into that subject because we just have kind of a bunch of some of them fun subjects to talk about tonight. But I just wanted to make sure that if we do have any audience members out there that may not be aware of this, I think it's very, very low probability that at least our audience, most folks know. But if you don't know and you happen to own, any type of AR, AK, or any type of pistol, short pistol that has a brace, now it's until something's done in the court systems, it is definitely, it could get you hemmed up big time. Now we do have to mention that in the Fifth Circuit Court in Texas, 2 cases had limited injunctions granted, which, Aaron, in and of itself just kind of irritates me. That why, if those judges would enjoin for both, of course, the FPC Firearms Policy Coalition in one case and Maxim Defense customers, and then in the Gun Owners of America case where they granted Gun Owners of America members and Texas state employees these just limited injunctions, is just a little bizarre to me. It kind of feels like these judges know that it's unconstitutional, but they don't want to be the judge that, sets this on fire. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, so I'll go at it this way. So just real quick, I think we talked about this. So this is my now short barrel rifle, right? You can see my stock on there because I did not want to go without this configuration once I set it up. Man, this is the BCM 10.5-inch at the time pistol that I built. Man, just no compromise, just everything I wanted. And for my skill set, this is the ultimate home defense weapon, right? I've got 77 grain non-barrier blind rounds in it that are effective indoors, but I'm not concerned necessarily as much about over penetration. It's just the perfect weapon for me and at home. And I didn't want to give up on it. So I went ahead and got ahead of any rush to register with the ATF with the Form 1. But I wanted to state this, Eric. I got on, for one thing, forgive me, I cannot remember his last name, but Jared that does Guns and Gadgets. Mm-hmm. Man, he is
great
one of
source.
He is an amazing source, obviously a good heart. Man, he lays out a video about one or two times a day And so I went on there, and he said he had some exact figures
Yep.
of people that had actually registered like me with the Form 1, and it was 255,000 people. And estimating how many pistol braces there are, that was like 0.06%,
Yep.
right? So less than a percentage. So, and that just
Now
has
was it 0.6? It was
point.
0.6. Yeah.
Pardon me. It
Yep.
was, I believe it was
Yeah.
0.6%.
Yeah. That's
I'm an
what I
accountant. I don't
no,
want to
Aaron,
do math.
that's what I heard. That's okay. No, yeah, 0.6. I mean, depending on how, and that was, I believe,
Either way,
ATF's numbers.
it
Mm,
was a small amount of,
minuscule.
yeah. So obviously, so many people, of course, since this has gone back and forth, it's in the courts, it's working its way through the courts, more than likely, not actually, nearly 99, 100% chance it's going to make it to the Supreme Court. So people are just biding their time.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And I believe that I, in my heart of hearts, believe that it's going to make it to the Supreme Court and that it's going to be found unconstitutional. I believe that. Now, is there a possibility that we have some justices that are acting like these judges in Texas? And God bless them. They've been good to us. I just really, when this came out, I just knew. And again, that's where I got to be careful. At that point, Aaron, in my heart of heart, I believed that it would be nationally enjoined,
mm-hmm.
and that a national injunction would happen just based on the fact that overnight it could make people felons. Now, I will say this: I want to make sure this
Yeah,
is
I want
clear.
to talk about that too. So,
Yep.
so say what you're going to say, and then I have a question because I do not know the answer to this.
So, and again, we always like the caveat: we're obviously not lawyers. I frankly wouldn't want to be a lawyer. But having some understanding, under studying, or at least getting good information from some lawyers that we trust, it gives us at least the ability to have an opinion, I suppose, or our own opinion. So we're not at
A
all
decent
making yeah,
interpretation.
an interpretation. Yeah. So these two cases with these limited injunctions, so this is something that's key, is the only thing that does for you. That doesn't mean you want to go out there, if you own one of these types of pistols, that you just want to keep running around, taking it to the range and just kind of flaunting, hey, I'm protected under this injunction. Now, folks out in the audience, some may be angry with me when I say this, but I personally would not chance it. All
Yeah.
that means is that, yeah, you could absolutely still be arrested, but then you would have to go through the legal process to determine, oh, well, yeah, this person was an FPC member at the time, and or Gun Owners of America member, or Maxim Defense customer, so on and so forth. But man, I personally wouldn't want to chance that myself. I'm just saying it.
Yeah. So that begs the question. So what status is someone right now that has not complied to this rule and still has their pistol brace in their safe, off of the gun or on the gun, etc.? What status are they? Is that a felony?
Aaron, to my reading of this rule, that is correct.
Well, and I just have to put
And I'm
this.
not at all capitulating to this
Yeah, yeah,
unconstitutional
yeah.
rule.
Well, we're
But
talking. Okay, what is a law, whether it's unconstitutional or not? We're just talking about letter of the law, right? So, Eric, did you hear that the person in the Justice Department, I guess, don't quote me on, I don't remember exactly the details, but they stated that they were skeptical about bringing any charges against Hunter Biden for lying on the 4474. Right.
4473.
Yep. Pardon me.
Yep,
Yes.
that's okay.
And that, he he didn't have a criminal background, and so they weren't going to, at the time he's rehabbed or whatever. Or if someone else going to get that kind of treatment right now for this particular rule? Are,
Yeah,
are there some people that are going to get hemmed up on this, somewhere around the country right now? Right? Very
yeah, who
unlikely,
knows?
but
We could see that. Yeah, I don't know. I
it's
definitely
just
don't
that
want
whole
to.
two-tiered justice system, right? That
Yeah, which we know
mhm.
is absolutely a part
I bet you,
of our
I bet you,
society.
Trump would be brought up on charges if he lied on a 4473.
You can guarantee it. A little edit point here, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I had in my notes to mention House Res HJ 44, which is a bill to nullify the pistol brace rule. Unfortunately, Aaron and I were speaking off the cuff and just kind of skipped over some of my notes here. So I would be remiss if I did not mention that absolutely you need to go out and push your congressman out there to support this bill. This bill made it out of committee, but has not been brought to the floor for a vote. For some reason, I'm not sure what's going on with Speaker McCarthy and his staff. I'm not sure what's going on, but they're kind of slow walking this bill, and that's Congress's job to nullify the executive branch when they overreach. So again, this would nullify the pistol brace rule. Now, I understand folks out there are going to say, well, there's no way Biden's going to sign it. That's even if if it passes in the Senate, which is kind of a low probability, but who knows? We may have some brave senators out there, maybe Manchin, who knows, that would possibly vote for it. Now, that said, we know Biden's not going to sign it. I mean, there's no question that he's not going to sign it. But most importantly, this is what we got to remember is that if at least the House passes a bill that says, "Hey, we don't agree with this unconstitutional rule," it would send a huge message to the courts, and specifically the Supreme Court, which is likely where this is going to wind up. Hopefully, it's stopped before that. But anyway, go and contact your congressman, congresswoman, and push them to pressure the leaders to put this on the floor, and then also pressure them to vote for it. So I'll try to put the switchboard number into the show notes so you guys can go out there and do that. Now back to some remedies we were about to discuss. Well, Aaron, and just kind of on a little bit of a scholarly note, if I can even use those terms, I don't know. Number one, Aaron, I've been thinking about this, and I don't know what the right answer. And this is prior to me grabbing this book here. Is at this point, I'm really, really concerned moving forward. What is the right answer for, let's just face it, the highest tiers of the FBI, for instance, the DOJ itself, they're clearly politicized, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's unfortunate that what's the right answer? I don't think the right answer is necessarily placing them under the control of the judiciary, or not, excuse me, judiciary, pardon me, the legislature. I don't think there's a real right answer to that, but I just think there's got to be some way that those agencies are taking out of the political control of the executive branch. I don't know what it looks like, and forgive me, there's been at least a couple of states that have taken there, and I'm a little bit half cocked because it's been a while since I've heard this, but there's at least been one or more states that have, because of this very type of corruption in law enforcement at the state level, have taken the state law enforcement out from under the governor.
Interesting.
So I don't know what right looks like, but man, from what we've seen over not just in the last, 4, 5, 6 years, but even before that, it's clear that at least at the highest level, I'm not saying the rank and file great people in those agencies, it's at the top that there's a
Bro,
problem.
here's what I always like to think about. Russian and election meddling. Dude, the FBI said, "Hold my beer, bro."
Yep. Yeah.
Real election meddling. Okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Well, and it's I this is going to start to sound a little bit like a evil sect conspiratorial um show, but back in the church committee or commission back in the 75, 76, when right after Watergate, the Senate called these hearings where they were uncovering, I mean, massive overreach in the intelligence agencies domestically.
Yeah.
And Aaron, it's interesting because what came of it was the FISA courts. And look how the FISA courts have been manipulated,
Well, and I'm going to telegraph my ignorance until just a week or so ago. The whole conspiracy that the CIA killed Kennedy. I don't know. I don't know much about that because I've never really looked into it. But I had never heard this, and I'm only paraphrasing, but that he stated that the CIA should be broken into pieces and scattered.
Yeah, I don't know about that either.
And
But I
I
will
think it
say
was even a
this.
speech. But in other words, he was talking about the illegitimacy of some of those intelligence agencies for sure, including the CIA. But so
Well, what I would tell
again,
you, Aaron,
I'm not well versed in it, but
what
I
I
believe
would
it was
tell
a
you,
speech that he said that.
yeah, I would have to look at that. I'm ignorant of that as well, Aaron. What I will say is, I deeply believe in our nation's needs to have an intelligence agency, especially for um, foreign intelligence gathering. There's no question that there's a need for that. I believe that, especially coming from my military background and knowing how important intelligence is, especially when it relates to warfare and and even just mitigating without war, um, foreign aggression. So
Mhm.
it is necessary. It's just unfortunate when you have individuals that are at the highest levels of control that can use those agencies against their own people, or use those agencies even.
Against political
Yeah,
opponents.
yeah. So,
And anyone that doubts that's the case, man, you're
yeah.
not paying attention. But
Well, Aaron, one of the things that I was going to say but before I mention what I just mentioned a second ago, is that, Aaron, did you ever read this book, the Liberty Amendments by
no,
Mark
I did
Levin?
not. Is it pretty good? Now, of
Oh,
course,
it's
I'm well familiar with the topic and the author.
yeah. So this is kind of cool, and I will tell you, I'm telling on myself. I loaned my original copy out, but I'm sitting here holding, and I pulled it out of my keep safe box. But this is, in fact, was a gift from a real good friend of mine, and it's a signed copy from Mark Levin.
Oh, sweet.
Um, but yeah, so I think it's important for us to sometimes, okay, what is a solution for you know out of control debt? We're headed towards $31 trillion in debt, unsustainable debt. Um, how do we start to rein in and actually have a government that is actually actually of the people, what we're supposed to have. And I think, frankly, um, what Mark Levin laid out, and man, it had to have been, I think it was 2010 or 13. I forget when this. I could look in here and find out. I'm a little, again, a little half cocked, but I think it's important, when we talk about problems, that we talk about what are some of the solutions. And I think the number one, I mean, just a few of the, I'll name some of these amendments that Mark Levin believes that should be taken up. And one of them is an amendment to establish term limits for members of Congress. I think that's, if we even just got that one, there's people in Congress that have served for their entire adult life.
Hey, hold on a
Never.
second.
Yep.
Don't use that term "served"
Mm.
lightly. I would say some serve, some just utilize their spot in Congress.
Yep. To gain more power, obviously. But yeah, I mean, not just on the Democrat, but both sides, Republicans and
Oh, yeah.
Democrats. We can name names. I'm just not going to right now. There's a second one here, an amendment to establish term limits. Excuse me, I'm about to repeat the one I just read. An amendment to restore the Senate, which that is another huge one. So the 17th Amendment made it to where the senators, 2 senators for each state, were elected by the people. Now, most would say, well, that sounds like the right thing to me. Well, originally, prior to the 17th Amendment, the 2 senators were elected by the state legislature, which, again, the reason for that, the mechanism, is to make sure that those senators really have their constituency back in their state in mind when they govern or when they legislate. But the 17th Amendment, in my opinion, made it to where those Senate seats became national seats, essentially. Yeah, granted, it is the people of the state electing, but that popular election, and not a Republican election, as in with the state legislatures, I think has made it to where the Senate really is more beholden to the national sway, if you will,
Mob.
yeah.
That's going too far. But yes,
Yep.
you're the whims of popular opinion.
Yes, instead of instead of being beholden to the states themselves. So I think it's interesting that Mark had that one as second. Another one would be an amendment to establish term limits for Supreme Court justices and also a supermajority legislative override, meaning that if a law was passed that was unconstitutional, that then a supermajority could then just simply override that legislation. And I'll just name one more here instead of bloviating on here, but 2 amendments to limit federal spending and taxing. So, that's just a few of them. I really recommend that if folks haven't read this book, it's a deeply important subject, and really what it's based off of is it's based off of Article 5.
So for the listeners that can't
Yep.
see it on video, that's the Liberty Amendments by Mark
Thank
Levin.
you, Aaron. I appreciate that. I got ahead of myself. Yes, the Liberty Amendments by Mark Levin, I'll put in the show notes. But Aaron, that is based on, and I can read a quick little tidbit. So this is Article 5 of the Constitution. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of three-fourths of the several states. I won't read the whole thing, but key in this is one of the portions of Article 5 that's never been used is a states convention or called by the states, right? So that 2/3 of the states, which to my knowledge is 33 states. So if 33 states legislatures vote to have a convention, the federal government and the federal Congress has to hold a convention to vote on those amendments. So I think it's key that we really, really push our states to do that. If your state has not done it, and I should have came with the list, but there's been, I believe, 19 or 20 states. They're I mean, that's a bunch.
Yeah.
I know we still have to get that other 13, but if 20 states have voted on their own to have a convention, man, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Well, enough about that, Aaron.
Man, I
ahead.
have. So let's get on some lighter topics here, bro.
Okay.
So yesterday, I started a new show. Now, I don't watch a ton of TV, but one of the things that I really like to do because both Becky and I are busy every day until 9ish or so every day, because we both have things that we enjoy to work on: guitar playing, jujitsu, working out, etc. So we're always running out of shows to watch. Well, yesterday she decided to start that Ted Lasso. Bro, I hear that you like that, and I'm kind of mad that you didn't pull me in on that. What's the deal?
Well, hold on for clarification, Aaron. I've not watched it.
You haven't?
No. So my wife has been watching it, and she loved it. Now I did see portions of the end, and now I'm mad that I didn't watch it with her. But she's willing to watch it again. We're going to watch it together.
Okay, so I assumed, make an ass out of you and me, right? I assumed that you watched it because Jana was talking about it. But I've watched 3 episodes, and to be frank, it's a very it was complete opposite of what I thought. It is a very feel good type of show. And sometimes people don't like that. The word they like to use is it's contrived, right? Well, man, what's wrong with a good story? What's wrong with happy endings? What's wrong with stories about people, going after excellence in so many areas of their lives, including trying to help other people be the best they can be, him being a coach and just a funny character. And man, I just spent 3 episodes, and it was just like this constant way that this kind of, I don't know if he's not a redneck, but he's definitely got a pretty thick Southern accent, but he's constantly using psychology on all these people around him successfully. Like I said,
that sounds intriguing.
I'm only 3 episodes into it. Like there was this one time where this guy that's not a big part of that soccer team had a suggestion, and that guy was kind of mumbling. He had this piece of paper. He had an idea for a play. And Ted goes, "Hold on a second now. I have a real hard time hearing people that don't believe in themselves." And he had him speak up. And then man, that was loud. I heard that. Man, I like feel good stuff like that. So I'm excited to watch some more of that. So
maybe I'll have to have my wife start that over tonight.
So you and any audience members out there that haven't sat down to watch that, it's pretty darn good.
Well, Aaron,
so far at least.
If I can, add something to what you were saying about stories, feel good stories, things that teach us life lessons, all that. Aaron, that is what stories, important stories and especially those that teach us real um, lifelong lessons that help us.
Yes.
I mean, you can point back to the classics, literature. That's what a lot of that is about, and a lot of literature too is, I'll just add, is biblically based as
Yep.
well, whether people know it or not, or realize it or not. But, and I just wanted to add, I think that is why we should strive for good stories, even
Well,
if they're not completely true, as
well,
long as
because
there's value and virtue in it. I think that's when it's important,
well, that's what you call idealistic, right?
Hmm.
It's an ideal to strive for. Hey, a story about a man that loves his wife, maybe having trouble in his marriage, but loves his wife and is actually trying to better himself and to show his wife more love, etc. Because there's some of that I just saw a little bit in that show. Man, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with being reminded that things are important? Being a good father, being a good husband, being a good steward of your finances. Man, it's the more you have that stuff in your mind, it makes you feel good, and the next day you may make a good decision based off of what you saw the night before.
Yeah.
I know we're getting a little bit too touchy feely here,
I don't
but
I don't think so.
so I mean it's the same thing with doing the best you can, learn how to shoot better, learn how to roll better on the mats, get stronger, get healthier, so but yeah, I was thinking I was going to get on to you about that, bro, but I guess I can't. I made too many assumptions.
Yeah, I will tell you, I saw some of the end. I wish I hadn't seen it. But yeah, I have to agree. From everything I saw, it looks great. And what's funny is that, and I don't know if you've seen some of those pictures of Nick recently, but he looks a lot like him.
Oh, definitely.
It's hilarious. Yeah, my son Nick, people calling him Ted Lasso. It's pretty funny.
Well, bro, I think this is kind of a unless you've got some other topics, I'm looking at our outline here. This is a nice way to kind of roll back and have a fun conversation, because Eric, what we were just talking about, even though it was sprung off of a Ted Lasso conversation, that's about mindset too, bro.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. I can leave us with one additional jovial subject, and that's a little more gear if you're cool with it.
Oh yeah, let's talk gear.
Not that big of a deal, but again, our audience knows I started off on a shotgun adventure, and of
Sweet.
course, here is my Beretta A300 Patrol, which I've not done a lot to yet. I'm kind of slowly moving along with this. I've got a sling on it. I'm settling on a flashlight that I'm going to place on it probably within a week or so. But I got recommended by Lee Weems the Van Comp side cards that
Cool.
I've got some dummy rounds in right now, and so yeah, I've been dry firing a little bit with my loading techniques and whatnot, but I tell you that this takes a lot of dexterity. I'm trying to play with some of the methods that Matt Hott has shown a couple times in some videos, and I'm kind of digging this little addition to my shotgun. But I also believe that Daryl Bolke had something to do with the design of these. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
that's a new little bit of gear
Man, that
that I
was a
got
shame.
this week.
Speaking of Daryl, he was in a couple of classes. I think he was in in Caleb's class, and wish
Yep.
I would have ran over there and talked to him for a little bit. We need to have him on the
Yep.
show.
Oh, we definitely do.
I
One,
love hearing his. Eric, I don't know if you ever heard how serious he is about small revolvers.
yes. Oh yeah.
I'd like to hear some more conversation about that. But okay, so A couple of questions. So, have you found any flight control yet?
No flight control, but I've gotten some Remington 8 pellet that I'm about to go pattern tomorrow.
Okay,
So, and I talked with Eric Gelhaus about it. He said that ammo's pretty good. Yeah, man, flight control is hard to find.
and that's
Real hard to
weird.
find. Yeah, it's just, after the pandemic, a lot of people got shotguns, and of course, I would also say that there's a lot of people have kind of gotten a little more serious about shotguns again, and so, yeah, flight control is hard to find. Um, but he also made some other recommendations, which I remember now. Normally, I try to write notes about most of the important things, and I probably did. I'd have to dig up some of my
Did you go
notes.
back and listen to that episode?
Um, I didn't, but
Is
it
that what
was
you're talking about, bro?
well. I was going to say that I remember now that Eric had made some other recommendations, like some Hornady loads and a couple of others that now I'm shopping for.
Okay.
But I was just going to make one mention. You see this? Oh, doesn't it's a little bit? Can you tell this dummy around here?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's got this nice orange plastic. The one thing I don't like about it is how light they are, and this is another thing I heard Matt Hott talk about. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get some lead shot and epoxy some lead shot in here
That's a
and
good idea.
see if that makes a better dummy round. But yeah, I've been
Because yeah, if you're trying to practice your loads of shells, it's not going to be as realistic in how it feels if it's a light dummy round.
yeah, and so just like in my dry fire session today, right before my workout, I was doing some loading techniques with my new cards here in my dummy round. So
So
trying.
one
Go
more
ahead.
question then, Eric, about your. So do you ever plan on putting a optic on that, or are you
Oh
just going to
yeah.
run sights? Yeah, okay.
Oh no. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely going to run an optic. So and again, the only reason I haven't, I could probably decide today and just order it.
Yeah,
I absolutely could, but I'm
man.
just
Again,
taking my time.
there's some crazy offerings by Hollow Sun. I know some people aren't too into Hollow Sun, but man, they become a standard for a reason.
Yeah, I've been leaning towards one, possibly an EPS, frankly.
Okay,
For the shotgun, I want to go with a closed emitter.
okay,
So yeah,
cool.
I'm thinking on it, man. Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm looking forward to the range session tomorrow. Going to do some patterning and do a few assessments. I think I'm going to do the range master baseline assessment tomorrow. It's been a while since I've done that. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing some improvement.
Man, speaking of going to the range, I see my doctor again in like 2 weeks. Gonna have some X-rays and stuff. But man, I was thinking I might just not shoot until I get released for jujitsu. I just don't know. Of course, I can ask him about it, but one can assume, man, even 9 millimeter, how it goes up your shoulders. I mean, there could be some sharp effect on those
Yeah, I don't,
components in my neck.
again, not being a doctor, but I would think that if he's not, what are you supposed to? What's their max that you can lift? 10 pounds.
I think it's 20 right now.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
again, I am literally just speculating, and I'm also trying to be a little bit more cautious. But that is one thing I just have to be really careful about how far I move my neck. Just can't
And
go
so
any.
I'd like to see you do this and that, but except see.
Let me try and pop my neck here. I'll tell you what, though, every now and then I'll feel a tenseness in there, and I'll almost try and like, oh, dude, don't do that.
Exactly.
But the thing is, he also said it's not eggshells either. He said the hardware in there, it's pretty tough. And another thing, usually people are concerned about fusions. The deal is, I've got a fusion in between brand new discs, and people usually say, okay, if you get a fusion, you're going to have a problem above it, below it. You're just going to have to, if you get it done early in your life, it's going to damage
Mhm.
other discs and vertebrae. But that's another aspect of having those two discs around the fusion. It negates that completely,
Yeah.
because I mean,
I
they're made out
assume
of
that. Yep.
they're made out of metal, and there's a polymer in there that is a bearing surface for the disc. It's they're even
Oh, so
tougher.
so the discs themselves are made of metal.
So it so if you can picture a cylinder, a flat kind of cylinder with a dove joint on the top of it, bro,
Mhm.
and there's two of those, and literally hammer those into the freaking bone,
Hmm.
and because it's a dove joint, it gets locked in there.
Mhm.
Those are two dove joints, and they have a hinge on the back, and then but there's a very high tech polymer that's in there. I can't remember the name of it, but it's just this really intense bearing surface that's better than any disc that you would have in there
Hmm.
already, right?
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
So,
man, I'm glad for you.
and he I was gonna have another disc put in there, but he said he thought about it after before, right before they started the surgery. He said, Aaron's pretty busy and pretty active. I'm putting some heavy duty ones in there for him,
Awesome.
which is pretty
Excellent.
cool.
Well, bro, can I leave us with one last thing? I was gonna go over a little paragraph, but I'm not going to. I just want to tell everybody out there, just because number one, I like supporting good people. And Jack Carr is an awesome dude. I've not met him, but from the things that he's been doing, he seems like a kind-hearted guy. I learned about Jack Carr from James Yeager, the late James Yeager. May he rest in peace. But this new book that I'm reading just came out, Jack Carr's Only the Dead. Folks should go out and get this if you're into thrillers, because some of the things that Aaron and I were talking about earlier, there's a lot of relation to the world. And folks think, well, oh, it's fiction. Well, I think I've even heard Jack Carr call some of this type of writing faction. And
Yeah.
there's so much related. His earlier books, how much he talked about events that hadn't taken place yet, but have taken place afterwards. And so yeah, man. I mean, talk about a foreign, or not foreign, but a what's called the collective. I thought that was interesting, um, where it's essentially a global cabal of folks pulling the strings, behind closed doors. And of course the protagonist, James Reese, the freaking badass, is gonna save the day. So
Are you talking about that Navy SEAL Chris Pratt?
yes, the one that Chris Platt Crate, excuse me, can't talk,
Spit the shit out, dude.
that he plays in the Amazon series The Terminalist, which is another excellent book. That was his first book, I believe. That this is his sixth book.
Bro,
I'm gonna
so
be embarrassed if
was
I'm incorrect
Jack
on that.
Carr a SEAL?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's
And I
cool.
believe at one point he was under Jocko's command, or at least worked with Jocko. Yeah, he was absolutely a SEAL. And by the way, he
I
was
didn't know that
also,
until, sorry to interrupt. I didn't know that until maybe a few weeks ago, I think is when I
yeah,
saw
which
it.
is why his books are so detailed and so have so much real connection. And Aaron, by the way, he also, when he was a SEAL, he worked for the CIA.
Interesting.
So yeah, again, Jack Carr, folks, get out there and support this incredible man, and his, the information he's putting out there is fiction, but if you hear Jack Carr talk about the influence of books on his life, it's real encouraging. And frankly, Aaron, and I'll tell this and we can get off here. He knew before he was a SEAL that he was going to be an author.
Interesting.
And like, I mean, he talks about reading David Morrell's The First Blood, and all these other authors, Tom Clancy, you
Mhm.
know, all these other authors growing up, where he, as a SEAL, he's like, you know what, I know what I'm going to do when I get out. I'm going to be an author, and becoming a successful author is hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard. And a SEAL buddy of his happened to know Brad Thor, which, for folks out there that read these books, I'm a huge Brad Thor fan as well. Another thriller author. Um, he knew Brad Thor and said, "Hey, if I could get you a phone call with him, would you like to talk with him?" And he's like, "Hell yeah!" And Brad Thor says to him, he's like, he sets up a phone call, and he said, "Listen, I'm not going to help you with writing. I'm not going to help you with transcripts or any of that. I'll just get you. I'll get you in contact with my agent. You know, is the book done?" And Jack Carr told him at this point, "Yeah, it's done." He said, "Is it really done? Is it as good as it can be?" And he said, "Maybe I should spend." He said, "Yeah, call me when it is absolutely the best that it can be." And he did. And Brad Thor passed the transcript to his agent, and the rest is history. So that's kind of a cool connection there. And
And was that the terminal list?
yes, yes, it
Cool.
was. Yeah. So anyway, it's I'm about 3/4 through. I'm gonna spend quite a bit of my day tomorrow reading it. But yeah,
Eric,
excellent book. Go ahead.
how often does James Reese carry a Glock 19?
He has, but he also carries a lot of cigs.
Oh,
He because of course Jack Carr, if you're a gear person, folks like
yeah.
Jack Carr's book, because he's always sprinkling gear in there. But of course, and I like this, it's all his favorite stuff.
Well,
You
hey,
know,
I don't know if he had anything to do with this, but man, in that terminal list series on Amazon, dude, James Reese was basically going around with like this exact rifle, straight up everything BCM. I think BCM got involved with that series because everybody was carrying
Uh,
BCM.
well, Aaron, that you reminded me of something that's crucial. Is also about all these kind of preordained situations. Is Aaron, before Terminal List was ever even published, Jack Carr envisioned Chris Pratt playing James Reese,
Oh, that's cool.
and no connection whatsoever. And his buddy that introduced him to Brad Thor also, if I hope I have this right, I'm close. I believe is the same person that also knew Chris Pratt, because this SEAL buddy of his does a lot of the, lack of a better term, essentially advising on movie and TV sets
Yeah.
as a SEAL. So of course he knows how to properly, you know, get people squared away on proper tactics and gun handling.
Bro,
And
that's
yep.
another thing. And number one, I really like Chris Pratt. He, as far as I know, he's a good dude.
Mhm.
And
At a
he,
minimum, he's a Hollywood conservative at a
yep,
minimum.
yep. And you watch him in that series, bro. He obviously knows how to handle pistols and rifles. He obviously shoots.
Yes.
We can see a mile away when people don't know how to handle a gun. So
Now he's had a lot of help from because the person doing, and I feel bad that I'm forgetting his name. I'll try to put it in the show notes. Is the advisor that I mentioned is an advisor on the Terminal List set, and of course, Jack Carr has had a role in a lot of that too, but
yeah,
primarily it's because he's busy writing scripts and all that as well. So yeah, man. And again, I'll just add this: check out Jack Carr's podcast. He
Oh,
he just
cool.
he just had Jeff Gonzalez on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so
Very cool.
yeah, you might check that podcast out. He's seems to be a really good dude.
Dude,
So
speaking of, and we'll end it here. I hope I can take Jeff Gonzalez's 25-yard class and hit 95s at least.
I know you can do
I
it.
was embarrassed, man.
No big deal,
It's
man.
all right. I'll do it anyway. I'll do it anyway if I'm not doing my best.
Well, Aaron, you're going to improve from getting some strength back, and you also know the things that you need to work on.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, brother. Have a blessed evening, man. Good weekend.
You too, buddy. Love you. Bye.
Love you too.